As we continue with Recipe for a Classic 2021 9th edition here on the KZone, joined now by Fitchburg High School Hall of Famer, 2009 inductee, Todd Steffanides. Todd, great to have you along with us here on this edition of Recipe for a Classic, and great to have you here tonight. I want to start first as we kind of delve into your experience in and a part of this rivalry as a Fitchburg High School student athlete that competed in this rivalry, starting first with where your experience in the game began. So I want to talk a little bit, maybe right at the outset, about your family upbringing, where you kind of born and raised here in Fitchburg. Clearly you were surrounded by athletics. Your father, Frank, was a coach and later an athletic administrator in Leominster. What neighborhood did you grow up in, and how did that influence your life going forward?
Yeah, I grew up a couple blocks away from Memorial Middle School. And, it was, I consider myself one of the last Sandlot eras where it was a group of us kids growing up in that area. And when I was young, I was kind of with my older sister, hanging out with the older kids in the neighborhood. Mark Pollock, who was a Fitchburg High defensive master at his own right, was, a few houses away, and his sister and my sister were friends. So we were I was always chasing them around when I was real little. And then, and as I grew up into my middle school years, I, formed my own bonds and relationships. And, we were kind of running around to Nolan Park or Laurel Street Park or whatever patch of grass we could play. We would play touch and tackle football games on a little strip of grass by Notre Dame Prep School, back with the Bolak family and the Gabriel and the Roy family and all that. So it was a fun time, and I sometimes see it here and I'm like, oh, wow, it's happening. And, but otherwise it's organized now and it's really hard to see. But those were, very fortunate times, and certainly growing up in that area was a great thing for me.
How much did the surrounding of athletics within your family ultimately influence your decision to go on and make the decision to play high school athletics or get involved with sports at all?
Yeah, I think I'm one of 4 children. I have 3 sisters, and like I tell people now, it's like I could stay inside in a small house with my 3 sisters, or I could go outside and just grab a ball and make my own game. And so that was kind of my world when I was growing up, and it was kind of all I knew. I would go to my father's practices, be the ball boy. Truth be told, when his team was winning by a short margin at Neshoba, a regional high school, he would tell me before or after the game, hey, next time or this time, don't be in such a hurry to get the ball back if we're winning, so he had a little gamesmanship to him back then. But, being the bat boy for his state championship softball teams back in the late 80s, those were all memories where I remember going to practices, kind of being his little shadow, his gopher. He used to call me. I used to go for this and go for that, working his soccer camps when he ran them at Mawachusett, things like that. I always had that passion, being around him. I always looked up to my father in that regard as well. And I always just had a passion for being around any game, whether it was soccer. I used to play youth soccer, street hockey, and certainly baseball and basketball. And once I picked up football in middle school.
Of course, having 3 sisters means that it was kind of like having 4 moms in a special kind of way. What was it like having, 3 sisters to chase around?
We were all separated by 3 to 4 years, so they were actually great fans. I was a bad fan. Like, I did not like going. I was the player, right? I wanted to play. I wanted to be active. I didn't like sitting still. Looking back, I was lucky that they were such good fans. They would go to my game. My older sister would come home from college and come watch me play every once in a while. So I was very fortunate to have such support that, a young teenage boy probably didn't recognize at the time.
Sure, they will at least know that you appreciate it now as you look back on it. If you were to kind of maybe try to search your memory a little bit, what was your earliest memory of when you connected with the Leominster Fitchburg football rivalry?
Yeah, so I remember my father took me to, I think it was the 1985 Brockton Leominster game, and I went to that game. I remember the news, Boston news media was there. It was a huge game, and I think it was later that Thanksgiving. And my mother's uncle used to kind of manage the Leominster Armory, and so we used to have all our family. My mother had 7 brothers and sisters. We used to have a large gathering for Thanksgiving, and I remember playing around. We were playing with their football in the gymnasium there, and my grandmother's sister, my aunt, came over and said, "You know, you're going to be on that field someday." We were listening to the game in the background. She's like, "That's going to be you out there, we're hearing." And I'm like, I didn't think, I was like 9, 10 years old. I didn't think anything of that. And then that was kind of I heard like the Paul DiGeronimo that day. And that was kind of like the early onset of me getting introduced to it. And by then, after that, I started going with my father to the Fitchburg Leominster games. And I'm sure I was playing in the background behind the bleachers at that stage, but that was it. And as the middle school years came on, it was, catch a couple of the plays from the stands. And then, certainly by the time I entered high school, I was in it full go.
No question about that. You were a 3-sport student athlete, and you enjoyed success in basketball and baseball as well. But ultimately, why football? What was it about the game that resonated with you? And did you feel like it came naturally?
Great question. And I wasn't going to play football. I kind of picked it up in the 7th grade because I was looking for something to do. Again, I think I played soccer that year. I played football in the fall that year. It was just something new. Some of my friends were starting to play it. So I was like, okay. I think my mom probably asked me, "Hey, do you want to try?" I said, sure. And, I remember Bruce Maxim was the coach back then for the Fitchburg Pop Warner team, and I kind of picked it up then and started learning. And then my 8th grade year, Bill Gates was the coach with a few other, I think both brothers, the Jerzyk brothers, were coaches back then as well. So there was a lot of history as far as Fitchburg football goes with that group, and they kind of introduced me to the quarterback play of it. And my passion was always basketball. My father would say my best sport was baseball. Certainly given my size, being 5'7", 5'8", by the time I graduated high school, I wasn't your prototypical quarterback or basketball player. So, but basketball was always my passion, and it still is today. But football kind of came to me, and I wasn't going to play. And I was actually, I forget the name of the coach. My father, the soccer coach at the time, had asked me to play soccer for Fitchburg High the first week of school. And actually, it was like the second or third day of school, my freshman year. And I said, "Dad, I can't sit here and do nothing all day." And he's like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I guess I'll go talk to Coach Kazenza and see if I can join the team late." And he drove me down. We talked to Coach. And from there on, I became the quarterback within a week at the time for the freshman team. And the rest kind of took care of itself.
And that seems like that's part of the story we'll talk about a little bit when you sort of become the quarterback. That plays heavily into the story later in your career as well. The football landscape was substantially different, I think, in the 1990s than you see today. How would you describe the evolution of the game during your playing years, and then, of course, in the years that followed? And in some ways, when you see the game today, do you feel like you can still relate, or do you feel like the landscape has changed as much and that it seems like an entirely foreign affair when you look at it today?
Yeah, great question. Coaching in general has changed a lot, I believe. But the game of football, like where I teach and coach now, the football coach asks me every year to coach, and I say, "Listen, I would love to. I'm very busy, but I used to coach. I used to be an assistant freshman coach. My second teaching gig and coaching gig in Concord, New Hampshire. But where I'm at now is I'm like, I haven't been around the game in almost 15 years now. I'm like, and watching the games, it's not easy for me to pick up. I would like to think that if I were around the game for a year or two, I would learn just new ways to teach and coach the game and relate to the players. But it's certainly changed. And listen, we've changed. And I tell people a lot, it's the players, the kids are very similar. It's the adults that have changed the way kind of we manage or micromanage a lot of their athletic situations.
I want to delve into that a little bit more. Let's talk about that. Because I agree with you. I do believe the way adults handle situations now are different. Is it because of the earlier organizational piece that comes with that in your mind? Or do you think it's because of the adults in education-based athletics and athletics before you reach the school age level? Do you think it's more of a hands-off, afraid to set the kind of standard, the high bar maybe that coaches and players in previous years set and were used to?
All the above. I don't know if I have the answer. I think if I did, I'd write a book and I'd make a lot of money. But I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I think we as adults are really hesitant to, be harsh on young student athletes because those individuals are just not used to dealing with a lot of adversity. From a sports standpoint, there are plenty of individuals who have day-to-day in life adversity, but from an athletic standpoint, I don't know if they are being put through the same adversities that athletes in the early 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, 70s, so on and so forth were going through. And I'm sure, my father and his era, they're probably said similar things about us, and my grandparents, my grandfather probably said the same thing about when I was a grandchild and they were watching me play. So it's definitely, I would like to think that things have changed for the better, and there's maybe more access, more opportunities, and maybe that's where the adult influence is very proud of. But then at the same time, they also feel, I guess, entitled to maybe speak out and get certain things their way, whereas it wasn't such the case back when I played.
Suddenly discovered you and I might be reaching the get off my lawn stage. That's kind of scary in the grand scheme of things. As you look back on your time at Fitchburg High, and obviously you matriculated to that point, you've got now the benefit, obviously, of being able to look back. You were a player, a student, now an alum. How do you remember your time? You went to the classic Fitchburg High School, the one that I remember, in my early years of high school before it was replaced by the new building out on Arnhow Road. What do you remember about your time there, and how would you describe it today?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, middle school really starting to go to games, and basketball was it, right? If you went to Fitchburg, if you were in Fitchburg, you love basketball. It's always been a basketball town first, I believe, or at least it was when I was growing up there. And it was, you go to the games and you don't go in the hallway and fool around. You were there and you were part of the game. Watching the Jack Scotts of the world play were really kind of those who you idolized and wanted to be like when it was your turn. And you had to earn that. It wasn't just you walking as a freshman and it's yours, unless you were really talented like a Zach McCall or Norman Pickett or something like that. But it was, you were kind of molded by competition, breeding better competition, and going to the games and seeing the passion on the court is something you want to emulate when and if you get the chance to. And I think that carried over into football and my baseball perspective as well. As a young kid, I didn't go to baseball games. I don't think the culture of the environment. I don't think that's the culture of the environment of baseball anywhere for that matter. But from a high school level standpoint, maybe it's different Leominster. That's why Leominster's always been so good, but I'm not sure about that. But it was athletics in Fitchburg. That high school time was a very special time. There was a lot of pride, a lot of Fitchburg pride, in representing your school, representing your town, representing your family. Like I felt when my name was in the paper, like I was representing the town, and that was a very proud moment, a very flattering moment for me. And I remember there was a game when there was a preview between us and North Middlesex, and Coach Ruggles from North Middlesex, he made a comment about me that was very flattering. And my dad and I were reading it over breakfast before school that day, right before it was game day, and I had a lousy game. And from that point on, my father and I agreed, all right, we're not going to read any more articles the week or the day of the game, and that's it. You can see the day after, and then that's it. On Saturday, that's it. You put that in the rearview mirror and you focus on, and that was kind of the times that I went through.
When you obviously look at that family connection to athletics and obviously the rivalry at large, at the time as you were getting ready and becoming a player, your father was not yet the athletic director, but was a coach and a teacher over in Leominster. I have to imagine that was a unique family situation. You were Fitchburg through and through, and although he lived in Fitchburg, he was Leominster blue and white, and those were the teams that he pulled for. What was that experience like, especially as you obviously went through your years where your two schools would often meet against one another?
It was really positive. It was really my cousin. I went. He and I have many cousins, but my closest, I would say, cousin. We spent a lot of time growing up together. Matt Gravel. He and I were the same grade, and so I knew a lot of Leominster kids. He had an older brother who I knew some of his friends as well, and his younger brother, I didn't know many of his friends, but my cousin played football as well. So we knew each other. We would play basketball once in a while in the summer as well. And so I knew a lot of the Leominster players who were my age or about a year or so around. And my father would, over school vacation weeks, he would take me to Leominster High School, and I would spend hours in the gym while he was doing whatever for his classes, preparing and cleaning classrooms, whatever. And I would run into Coach Maz, and I remember Coach Maz would give me a pointer here or there. And he said, "Don't you dare beat me when it's your turn to play for Fitchburg High." And like, it was a great, looking back, it was an unbelievable, fortunate relationship that I had, seeing Coach Dubzinski, just being able to have a conversation with him and when I was a young athlete. And as the high school years went on, when I was younger, like freshman, sophomore, I would sneak in with my father and make sure no one saw me until Leominster High. But it was, I was very fortunate. And my oldest sister probably had the hardest. She was going up against the state championship Leominster softball teams that my father coached. And my father always said, if you're playing against your mother, you play it against a beater. And so that was kind of the mindset. And I remember Leominster was winning, and Tracy Toll, the dominant pitcher for Leominster High back then, kind of gave my sister a fastball which she could hit. My father knew she couldn't hit the changeup, so when my father called the pitches, it was changeup, 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 fastball high, fastball high. When he called the changeup once, she threw a fastball, and when she came in the dugout after the inning, she said, "You're welcome, coach." Because she knew that would help the father-daughter relationship at home. But as far as my relationship, again, I knew a lot of the Leominster players. We had interacted, off the field or off the court. It didn't change our competitive nature on the court. We still kind of played like we didn't like each other in a good sportsmanship type of way. But it was, seeing Coach Johnson, who I had been around as well, like playing against him on the baseball field, like it was, and of course, Coach Johnson was so well respected by everybody in the area, and I'm sure he still is today. But truth be told, my father was looking for property or houses in Leominster around my 8th grade year, because coaches were asking, "Are you going to get him? Was he going to get me to go to Leominster High to play?" And not that I was a Division I, college prospect by any means, but I think it was just a matter of me being a good athlete that probably would have fit well in their programs.
No question about that. Your experience that you describe, it's funny, it sounds very similar to what student athletes go through today. We talk about there was a period of time in maybe the 70s, 80s, and even I think to a certain degree in the 2000s, where the communities weren't as well interconnected, or maybe the key players weren't as well interconnected. You enjoy, it seems, an interwoven relationship between the two communities, both with coaches, of course, that you described, those names, Mazzaferro, Dubzinski, and others, went back and forth between the schools through periods of time. So there was certainly this kind of mutually established respect between those two communities. And of course, with players that knew each other, that grew up together, that is very similar to what we see in student athletes today, where a lot of youth sports now are very much regional and much less community oriented, where they compete against each other at a young age. Do you think it was beneficial to have maybe that pre-established interwoven relationship? Because today, I think people look at that and go, it doesn't help in the long run, that seemingly them having these pre-established relationships may affect performance, or may affect the way that they compete. And of course, those are always the armchair quarterbacks complaining about the way the world has become today. But, in your experience, how did that, kind of benefit you having those interwoven pretzel-like relationships?
Yeah, I mean, we still didn't like Leominster. Let's make sure we get that clear. It was still we don't like them, they don't like us. But I think the fact that my father working, teaching, coaching in Leominster, I just had a different level of respect. I knew firsthand that Leominster High wasn't evil. And I think the fact that some people knew my father, they knew we weren't evil. Whereas there was still, on the pre-Thanksgiving Day, pep rally day, there was still blue paint on Fitchburg High door stops, and I'm sure there's red paint on the Leominster High building walls as well. So it was, there was still a rivalry piece, which I'm not sure how much of that still exists today. But it was, for me, there was still a way to, relate to your opponent, but still compete. I never really thought too much about it. I mean, now with AAU and travel ball and passing leagues, you are interacting with each other on such more of a year-round basis versus a seasonal basis that it's hard not to like someone who shares the same passion and interest as you. It's hard not to interact with them when you're seeing them or playing with them on a certain travel team so often. So I wouldn't blame the players in that aspect at all. I think they're doing the best job they can to balance and manage those aspects of competing, playing, and developing relationships that are probably going to last beyond their playing days.
No question about that. One of your teammates, fellow quarterback, Devin Gates, described you in the following way. He said, Todd Steffanides is the epitome or the poster boy definition of 1990s Fitchburg football. Always an undersized underdog who played 1.5 feet taller in stature. Said as a younger player that he was inspired to be you. And as you look back now at a description like this, how does that make you feel? And do you feel like you helped create an identity for Fitchburg football in the 90s?
I think I was just a part of it. I think Coach Kazenza and his staff created that identity. They were the ones who kind of set the formation and the expectations for how players were expected to do things. I'm very flattered by Devin's statements because Devin was the next big thing coming up. He made the varsity team as a freshman, and I remember when I had got the QB position early into our junior year, I remember thinking after that season that, wait a second, I got this freshman who's right here, who's already my height or taller than me. I better start working my tail off. And I don't know if Devin realized this, but he pushed me to raise my game to, I would like to think, a different or better level. But that was always something that was inside of me that, wow, I got some work to do, because the coaches think, and this was in my own head, like the coaches think that Devin is probably a better fit, and maybe they were going to move me to running back or something, So that was always something that was, and not that I wouldn't do it. Not that I would say no, I would do whatever the coaches asked, but seeing Devin coming up, knowing his talent, his skill set, his physical size, and his abilities. I knew that I had some work to do if I was going to keep my position. So the fact that he says I was whatever with the 90s football, like he had something to do with that too. He certainly played a huge role and was able to take the program to the next step with their Super Bowl victory and well.
And he certainly does appreciate that you are the lone person in your friend group who defends the fact that he now is the head coach at Leominster High School. Yeah,
again, having a father that taught and coached there, coaches don't coach because of the color of their jersey. They really coach because they love they love the game. They love working with the student athletes and how much they can affect, the X's and O's as well as the relationships that they build. So it doesn't matter to me what color jersey he's wearing. He's always going to have red and gray deep in his blood. I know that. He might bleed a little bit of blue right now, as he should. But I know in his heart's got plenty of red in it.
No question about that. You played for head coach Ray Cosenza, who you just mentioned a little bit ago, and he, of course, took up that historic mantle of Fitchburg High School football and proceeded to evolve it, and in his own right set the standard for what Fitchburg High School is now and will be for decades to come. How do you remember your experience learning from a legend like Ray Cosenza and, of course, the rest of his coaching staff?
Yeah, I mean, as a teacher and a coach now, one thing I always look back and try to emulate is his calm demeanor. Like I think coach is known for his intensity by a lot of players, and maybe because I was a quarterback, like he wasn't going to get in my face and say I didn't hit somebody, but he was always stern but calm, cool, and collected, and I think that reflected on our abilities to play in different situations, in different close game situations. And, you trusted Coach Cosenza. You knew he was going to get us prepared for each situation week to week. You always trusted in whatever the scheme was, whatever the play calls were. There was nothing that was going to be a surprise to us. There was nothing we were going to do in the game that we didn't practice already. So he instilled that confidence to believe in us by being there, by believing us himself, and that way we can believe in each other.
You mentioned, of course, that he might not get in your face, but he did make note here in our conversation that he could give you a hard time for a mistake. In his words, he could blast you for a mistake, which he noted didn't happen very often. But he did appreciate the fact that you would always pick it up and that you would get the job done. And I think that's something today that for student athletes, you've already made reference to it, taking that criticism, being able to internalize it and then use it and realize it isn't necessarily a personal strike against you. If a coach does that, it's a challenge. How do you translate what you experienced, why you were able to be successful using some of that, translating and understanding what coach was trying to do there, and what maybe could you recommend to student athletes today about that?
Yeah, and I go back to I was very fortunate to have a father who was a coach, and playing for him, he was very hard, not in a negative, yelling, see in your face way, but he was demanding is I think the word. And you train a certain way, you practice a certain way, and you expect to perform, play a certain way, and doing things the right way, as far as effort and attitude and executing whatever play it was, whether my father was coaching me in big league basketball or part of that Fitchburg Pop Warner football coaching staff or my little league baseball team. So having, and certainly in our own backyard, that's where probably most of the coaching happened. My father would be a receiver for me when I was in high school, and he would run the smash routes and the slant routes and the out routes for me so I could work on my release and my timing. And as well as rebound for me when I was shooting the driveway and playing catch to me as well, So that was probably the precursor for high school when it was time to be coached by a high school level coach. And I don't remember coach ever blasting me. I'm sure he was demanding of me. I'm sure he if I didn't do something right, he corrected me. But to me, that was just part of it. I didn't think that was mean or bad or coach had a bad temper. Like every coach is going to lose it once in a while because high school players are high school players. They're going to have an off day or an off moment, and it's kind of when you're all in a family type of environment, you expect certain things a certain way, and sometimes the moon's a certain color, and things happen. So, but it was never ever over the top with coach. It was always well-intentioned and just done the right way. So it was pretty easy to kind of fall in line when you have someone like him leading the way.
As we continue on the This Is Your Life portion of this interview, Todd, Coach Cosenza described you as one of the best athletes, competitors, and leaders he ever coached, one of the most clutch, who always played big in big games. That's amazingly high praise when you talk about Coach Cosenza, the type of players he had and the success he enjoyed at Fitchburg. To what do you attribute and connect that success?
I was surrounded by a lot of great players. I really think I was fortunate to just be around people who made me better, where I didn't have to do a whole lot. I didn't have to run the ball 20 to 30 times a game. I didn't have to shoot 15 to 20 shots in basketball. I didn't have to, well, I probably should have had a better batting average on the baseball team. But, I didn't have to pitch. We had good pitchers. So I could do my role to the best of my ability. And the coaches could put me in situations that fit my physical abilities and that would help our team do as best we could. And that's all I really cared about when I was playing. I just cared about doing, executing my responsibilities to the best that I could. And whatever we could do to help the team, whatever my job was to help the team win, that's what I was willing and ready to do. And that's that. I didn't really care about anything else. I hated being interviewed after games. I hated, trying to offer a quote or a thought about the game. I just cared about playing. I was never very vocal. It took me till probably when I started teaching, when I started being more vocal and being too talkative, probably like I am right now. But it was, I really just had a level of focus that I felt was just what's going to help the team do well this play or this possession. And that's it. And I really didn't care that much. I didn't beat myself up over making mistakes, and which I think allowed me to help make the next play a positive play.
Let's get you storytelling a little bit here, because your football career was marked by a change of position. According to your Hall of Fame bio, you had a position swap in 1993. It moved you to the quarterback slot. It noted in your Hall of Fame bio, quote, "It was a dramatic decision that immediately paid dividends, and that Todd became one of the finest Raider quarterbacks in 30 years. What do you remember about this moment? And what do you remember running through your mind when Coach Cosenza made the change and said, Todd, you're moving to quarterback and you're starting?
I was surprised. Michael Bolak was the quarterback the year before, my sophomore year, his junior year. He was a senior. And I remember thinking that the offense wasn't doing that great the first couple games. Excuse me. And we had an injury. I believe our tailback, Ryan Keenan, was injured in that game we played against Milford. And we lost that game. And the following week in practice, I think it was pretty evident that Ryan was going to be able to go. So they were going to have to make some changes in the backfield. And one of the changes was to move Mike to one of the running back positions. And I don't think they realized yet which one he was going to take. But I think because Ryan was out, they're going to move Mike to tailback, and which brought me into as a quarterback. And again, I was surprised. I didn't know really how to respond. They told me, and I just said, okay, well, I got to start getting ready to play football, and because I've been the backup for a little over a year, and I was the place kick holder for extra points. So I really wasn't that involved with the varsity games at that point. So when that happened, it was just, okay, well, how can I get myself to make sure I'm playing as well as I can play to help our team do well?
As you were going through that process of obviously taking over the position, you described yourself maybe more as a quiet leader, more of a lead by doing type of player. How do you translate that from, as you said, being the backup? Now you're going to assume this role of starter. And I think, for better, for worse, in the game of football, and I don't think much has changed, everybody looks at the quarterback spot and goes, okay, we're expecting you not only to obviously deliver the football when you're asked to deliver it, but you have got to be this more present leader. How did you feel about that attention turning in your direction?
Yeah, I remained quiet. I was really, we had a great group of seniors that year. And I think we were known that year. The storyline was, we're going to be undersized. We have to overplay our positions. And, we just had a great group of seniors that year they all enjoyed each other. They all embraced the underclassmen. And again, Mike Bolak and I, we grew up kind of playing everything and anything from our childhood days. So it was, we were all felt connected, in that group, which made, I think, our season so enjoyable. And I know the coaches raved about that season as well, just being such an enjoyable season, because we gave every ounce that we could that year. And that's one thing that I really take in my own coaching experiences is how do you get your team to give every ounce? Well, that team did it. And I was very fortunate to have good leaders around me who would pick up the vocal part of the leadership. I didn't have to be a captain at that time. I just had to make sure the plays were called in, call them in right, get everybody, make sure we were lined up in the right spots. And my only worry was getting the playoff, make sure nobody goes off sides, and let's execute this play and get some positive yardage out of it. The Ryan Keenans of the world, Jim Thomas's, George Bishop's, Michael Bullock, they were the leaders. They were the vocal guys. They were the Matt Schneiders. They were the guys who were talking and making sure everyone was staying the course of giving the best effort and executing things the right way.
Let's talk about your game, your junior year against Brockton. In the 1995 Boulder Yearbook, you specifically noted it as your fondest memory in your Fitchburg High School career was beating Brockton in football. A number of folks in your Hall of Fame bio say that it was your happiest athletic moment. Tell me the story of beating Brockton your junior year and why you call that your happiest athletic moment.
Yeah, that was, I remember my freshman year, it was a close game. It was a home game. The place was packed. I forget the quarterback's name. The quarterback had a huge arm for Brockton. And my sophomore year, we came in, I think it was 7-0 my freshman year. And it was like 7-6 my sophomore year. And then here was this undersized Fitchburg team that was going to go up against Brockton. And we had, we were 2-1 at the time. We had a close win over Oakmont. We had a close loss over against Milford. And then we had an okay win over Shrewsbury at the time, which was my first game. And so Brockton was my second game. And I remember the message all week from the coaching staff was just, if you don't believe, you don't belong. And that I think kind of upset us a little bit as players, where he's challenging us to not believe. Well, let's go, so it was as the game went on, it was, as it started, you're like, oh crap, here's Brockton, from my standpoint. And just like every other game, once you get hit once, it's like, all right, we're playing football now. And that's was, again, just trusting your plays, just trusting the coaches, trusting your teammates. That all took over. And then it took a few kind of special plays that game to really help us fulfill the upset. And one of them being Matt Schneider, remember, deflected an option pitch from the quarterback of Brockton and took it back about 30 or 40 yards, which helped set us up where they were going in to extend their lead, I believe, in the fourth quarter. So, that was just, I look back at that as my football defining moment. And, I remember my father coming in before the game that week saying, hey, the Leominster guys, the coaches are saying, they're really going to see what you're made out of this week. And they use some different terminology, I believe. So when we pulled it out, I'm sure my father went back to Leominster that Monday morning, fairly proud, and admittedly they told him how much respect they had. We'll just say that.
Ear to ear grin for Coach Steffanides. Let's talk about Thanksgiving and your experiences connected to this rivalry as a player. Game prep, very, very different, I feel, for Thanksgiving. There's always been that week in between, which of course gives you about 2 weeks prep. In a lot of ways, it's like the NFL Super Bowl in that way, where you have this extra week of preparation. By that point in the year, I think both schools have scouted each other enough, know and are aware of what goes on with each other. And now this is like the 2 weeks that are going to pay off, or the 10 days that are going to pay off in order to prepare. What was, film like? What was practice like? And how was the lead up to Thanksgiving different when you were getting ready for that Thanksgiving Day battle?
Probably one of the biggest differences was there was a football change. We went from using a Wilson to a Baden, because if we had won that game, we were going to advance to the Super Bowl. And so they had me start practicing with this Baden football. And actually, that wasn't the biggest. That was the second biggest, but I'll get to the biggest in a second. And I started just the feel of the ball for some reason. I remember Devin hated it. I remember Devin did not like the feel of the ball, but I was like, no, this for some reason, my spirals were just tighter, and who doesn't like that? So I just threw it better. I don't know what it was, but the Baden football, and if anyone from Baden's listening, you're welcome. But I just like to feel the ball, but I threw it better. And the biggest reason was I think our coaching staff saw a defensive tendency from a passing standpoint. And they saw that the Leominster safety crept up on running plays. So they felt the play action play was going to be really to our advantage. And that was what enabled me to throw 2 of my touchdown passes. And truth be told, it was the same. I threw 3 touchdown passes on Thanksgiving Day that year. And the first one, everything was clear as we drew it up, as we practiced for the week and a half. That was it. It was textbook. Clarence Yarborough darted through the middle. Nobody was there. Safety bit on the play action. And who wouldn't? Because Ryan Keenan ran all over them that day, over 220 yards, I believe, set a record at the time. But before he got going, we ran that play. And then later on in the second quarter, we called the same play, and my back was the play action was on the reverse side. So when I had to turn around, I didn't see the receiver, and James McCall was running. And I said, all right, I'm trusting the play. And I just threw it, and watching on film, you can see James kind of run under it and catch because it was so wide open. Because again, the safety just bit. But that was, it was each year the coaches did a great job of finding some sort of hole where we could take advantage of. And for me, for the passing part of our offense, that safety coming up that they had recognized enabled us to score 2 touchdowns that day on that specific play. And certainly the play of our offensive line and Ryan Keenan being able to run a lot all over the place that day was a huge advantage for us.
That was, of course, your junior year, 144 yards on the day, including a game-winning touchdown to James McCall with 39 seconds left. Coach Cosenza relates. It was a 44-40 win in what Coach Cosenza called one of the most exciting games he was ever involved in. Clearly, obviously, your success as a program to that point certainly fed into that, but there had to have been a lot going on for both communities in order to obviously reach that place where the winner was moving on to a Super Bowl and perhaps the loser was all done on their year. That overall environment, what was the day like?
Yeah, I mean, I remember early that week, Coach Cosenza asked me to go take a picture at Doyle Field. Mm-hmm. And there was going to be the other quarterback, Rob Raxasak. And, who would have thought that Rob was going to account for every point that Leominster scored that day. And I was going to have the winning touchdown pass. And we were both featured in the article that year. Great foresight by that media. But it was, I remember like the aura of that week leading up to the game was just so, it doesn't compare to any other football week. It really doesn't, not even the Super Bowl weeks that we prepared for. Everybody in school was into the game. The place was packed once you get to the field. People are yelling at you on the way out. Don't screw this game up, this and that and the other thing. You're going down, whatever. But the pep rally, I remember like the whole student body just being so enthralled in that one game. Even you could see the staff, the teachers at the time, everyone was just in tune, knew what was going on, knew it was on the line. And it was just, you felt like, you felt bigger than the moment at that time. Cause a lot of the focus is on you. And it was really a challenge to kind of keep that high school ego in check and to stay focused. And one of the traditions that Coach Cosenza had, at least when I was there, was we had the night before the game, we had, dinner and a movie, and then he brought in some guest speakers. And I believe it was Coach Cicino at Monty Tech at the time came in, and he gave this talk about visualization. He talked about just everything's going to be going crazy tomorrow, but the visualization starts tonight. And that's when I started visualizing it. And the practice of visualization for a sports component really hit me. And then listen, when a coach talks, I listen. I can't say the same for a lot of athletes, but when a coach talked, I listened. That's how it was brought up, right? And when he said that, I just went home and I went to bed at like 8:30 that night. I woke up at like 6, just ready for the game. And I always felt like I was like hours early and just waiting. But that practice of visualization really, I believe, helped me to throw the passes that I did that day, in those tight circumstances of the rivalry and all that was a part of it.
You obviously had the great fortune in being part of this series to play. And certainly from my position, and I think lots of us that live here in this region, still two of the finest facilities that you will ever find in high school athletics in this state and maybe in the region, in Crocker Field and Doyle Field. Talk to me a little bit about, your time playing at Crocker Field, Thanksgivings at Crocker Field. I mean, that was home. That was the place where you went for these big games, both as a kid and then obviously eventually as an athlete. Describe that environment from the locker room inside the field house all the way out onto the field.
Yeah, that locker room at Crocker Field, that it's that's where you kind of develop those friendships, that team bonding, that the chemistry, the brotherhood. It really is a unique experience. I don't know of many around that I've been a part of as a coach and as a player, and to have that little home outside of home, so to speak. It was like you wake up in the morning, you go to school, and then you walk down to Crocker. And there it is. Like there's your little dormitory, so to speak, where it's all of us just getting ready to practice or play a football game. And that was, again, I haven't come across something like that anywhere else, and I'm sure there is. But to us, again, that was just a way of life, and we were very spoiled that we didn't know it at the time. But, I remember, the groundskeeper, Mr. Shea, like always being there, always willing to help out, asking us questions, how to make things better. Is everything okay? And, helping him out with, putting the bleachers up in the summer or taking them down, for baseball season and whatnot at Crocker Field and the fence outside. I remember the national anthem, seeing the church steeples in the background, just the little skyline behind the Friday night lights. Those things were all just so like vivid memories for me. And it's definitely a unique experience, and we're fortunate to be a part of it.
Certainly a unique facility as well. You mentioned the skyline. Was there another spot somewhere maybe that you would always look, always go, maybe where family sat? Was there something about that stands that maybe stuck out to you?
I know my grandfather, when he came to games, and he would sit, he had his certain reserve seat, and he used to sit with all the other old timers of the crew. And I think when I got the quarterback position my junior year, he was very, I think, nervous because of how vocal and hard on the offense that the locals might have been. But I think he had a lot of nights where I think he could have been proud of me, and I'm very proud to have provided that for him, because I know how much he cares about his family members, and as much as he cared about the Fitchburg High program, being a Fitchburg High grad and a long member of the Fitchburg High Police Department. So it was always a pleasure to kind of make him proud and see him outside of football and be able to talk to him. The one regret I do have is that he had a knee surgery the night of the Brockton game. So he had to watch that luckily on film back then, where we give him the VHS tape and he was able to watch it while he was kind of laid up. So I'm sure he would have loved to have been in the stands that night.
No question about that. Of course, if one field in this series isn't good enough, that is incredible. You would get to go to the other community, even though it was hostile territory, and you get to go play at Doyle Field, which was another phenomenal cathedral of this game. What was it like going in there? What were the bus rides like? What was that time like where you were kind of uniting to go on the road with a mission in mind?
Yeah, it was great that the bus rides were short, right? You're right next door in the Twin Cities, and it was a quick trip, and you get off it and you get into another facility where it's just you, and it's kind of a real short walk from the field. But again, I go there and I see a lot of people that I already know, a lot of the coaches that I already know, and it's just okay, let's just stay focused. We'll talk after. I just remember just being fields of people standing on the hill, like that hill of the back end zone, closest to the baseball field, like just being packed, and the opposite end zone also being just the entire place, just having people all over it. And I've only had that experience one other time in my playing career, and it wasn't in high school. So it was really unique to just have both fields just packed with everybody caring so much about the rivalry. And I'm sure there was more than just the games, also the social aspect of it as well. And individuals coming home from college and whatnot, alumni, and as well as the people who bled red and gray and blue and white from both communities, being there to have the bragging rights over dinner that day.
Senior year, you also were fortunate enough to beat Leominster by a 38-14 score. In this game, according to Coach Cosenza, you rushed for 140 yards with 2 touchdowns. You had 1 rushing, 1 passing, and he said you were always big in big games. What do you remember about your senior year experience, especially coming off of a junior year that was so emotional, so exciting, what was considered such a big game, to come back a year later and to have to do it again? Another one of the unique parts about a rivalry, when you have a long 4-year career. What was it like having to go back to that senior year and try to do it again?
Yeah, that was one of the most nervous games I was approached. Most nervous I had approached a week with. It was Leominster High. Rob Raxak was also still the quarterback. And I'm like, holy cow, if he gets more than 6 touchdowns throwing and passing, we're going to be in trouble, because I don't know if I can do that again. And it was just a very nervous week for me, I remember. And I remember my father and I, had a long conversation in my bedroom about just controlling what you can control, staying in the moment. Don't worry about anything that happened or anything that's not, you can't control yet. Just take one thing at a time. And then we had a senior ceremony that the coaching staff organized every year that obviously you don't get to take part until you're a senior. And it's called the burning of the boot. And so we're doing that. And as this old cleat is burning in a coffee can, the seniors are going around, talking about their, what they enjoyed most about their playing career for Fitchburg High football. And I just remember listening to each senior and being how thankful they were. And from that point, I just said in my own head, I'm not letting these guys down. We're winning this game. And I think that's all I said. I'm like, guys, we're winning tomorrow, and I just said next. And I just woke up, and it was freezing that day. As my mother will say, it was the coldest day ever. It was, you went out there. I remember our star receiver, Clarence Yarbrough, saying, it ain't that cold. And I was looking at him like, well, yeah, you don't have to touch the ball every play. It's freezing. And so it was, luckily we had a great rushing game that day. We had, I think 3 of us had over 100 yards rushing. So it wasn't just a one-headed horse race. It was Greg Graham had a great day that day. Clarence's brother, Lawrence, had a great day that day, which obviously meant our offensive line had a great day that day. So that was a good feeling day once the game got going, because we had such control for pretty much the entire game. It wasn't that 44-40 exciting game that everybody saw the year before. So that was a little more relaxing from a player standpoint.
No question about that. Or as relaxing as that game would ever allow, I suppose, at that point in time. I think for players, pulling that jersey off for the first time and the last time marks some very, big milestones in your life. From that first time you pulled on the jersey, pulled on that red and gray, to the last, what was the kind of the overall experience like? What do you remember about putting it on the first time? What do you remember about taking it off for the last time?
Yeah, I remember my freshman year putting on number 11 and saying, okay, well, I'm playing with my friends. Here's what all my friends are doing. Let's go have fun, right? Let's go. Let's win a game, and let's go to practice, and let's have fun. And I remember, unfortunately losing our Super Bowl game our senior year in such a dramatic fashion. I didn't want to take my helmet off, so I couldn't take my shirt off. It was, I had such a positive relationship with all the coaches on the staff and all the players on the team that you didn't want to end. And when you're that age, that's kind of all you think about, right? And to take it off and hand it to the coach and just be so thankful for the times you had and the opportunities that the coaching staff was able to provide for you was just all you could really think about at the time. But it was bittersweet, but looking back, it was such an unbelievable opportunity that we had, that I had, and something I'm always thankful for.
Of course, as you left the red and gray and kind of departed the Fitchburg city limits, some may know, some may not know. So let's fill in the gaps a little bit on what's gone on since. You went on to what is now known as Plymouth State University, where you played basketball and baseball and obviously enjoyed a career there. You are still in the state of New Hampshire actively today, now in the education and coaching game yourself. Kind of fill in the gaps for people a little bit. Tell us a little bit about that story and maybe a little bit about whether the Leominster Fitchburg football rivalry and kind of, that experience playing and obviously then taking that forward with you, did anything in your college experience even come close to living up to that experience?
Yeah. The Plymouth State Keene State rivalry was very, very competitive, very close to the Fitchburg Leominster rivalry. It's different. You have a college atmosphere versus a high school atmosphere. You don't have as many local community members, but from a student body standpoint, that's about as close as I can remember.
Can certainly appreciate that. Obviously, you, as we talked about, coach, educator in your professional life. What about your Fitchburg High School experience? What about what you experienced do you take with you into your job and kind of affects how you do what it is you do today?
Yeah, I think, I was always influenced by adults in a positive way. Coach Doug Grutchfield always came across as such a professional individual and always carried himself with a sense of Fitchburg pride. And then certainly Coach Gazenza playing for him on the football team as well as the baseball team. I think we were able to really connect over 4 years essentially of two sports. Although, freshman and sophomore year, I wasn't as interacting on the football team as I was on the baseball team. But just being around them and those are your role models and being able to carry over their kind of values and how they handle themselves in pressure situations as well as not so pressure in situations. Being able to kind of have them as my nondescript mentors was something that I always took with me.
I can certainly appreciate that. So as we kind of work our way to the end here, I've got a couple of more questions I want to ask. First of all, obviously now you're kind of in this unique circumstance. The names that you have mentioned as teammates have now risen to a place where they now are in charge of that program. You name-checked Greg Graham. You name-checked James McCall. Obviously, knowing what you knew of them when you all were in high school and now seeing them where you all obviously mentioned those role models, they're in those roles now for this Fitchburg High School athletic program. How does that make you feel to obviously see folks from your generation having reached that point? And certainly if you were to remind them of something you all went through together that they could apply in their program today, what would you point out to them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy for those two. I saw Greg and James at a basketball coaching clinic a couple of years back, and I think James had just gotten the varsity coaching job. And I'm just so happy for the town, the school, and for them. They clearly are both real positive influences in the community, and real couldn't ask for better role models, I think. And the fact that they're both so willing and deserving to give back to the Fitchburg High Red and Gray is something that I'm really happy for.
I can certainly appreciate that. As you kind of wrap things up, thinking about your own career and your own experience, and you get your opportunity here, on this interview to mention or to be able to write your own script, so to speak. How do you want to be remembered? What are the first couple of lines in your mind of the Todd Steffanides history book of your life?
Let me see if I can get to. You're asking me to offer a couple lines of headlines for the history book of my life as a student athlete at Fitchburg High.
That's correct.
I was very happy to be playing 3 sports. I love playing with my teammates or my coaches. Didn't matter what we were playing, where we were playing. I love the competition, and I was just hoping that I could help my teammates and be as successful as we could.
Certainly appreciate that. As we wrap up, last question I love to ask alums, especially now, even the quiet leaders like yourself. If I got you the opportunity today to go address that Fitchburg High School football team that's going to go into action later on Thursday morning against Leominster for the 140th meeting, the 115th time on Thanksgiving, what would be your message to that program as they get ready to take the field?
Yeah, it would be a little different than what the message I got from some of the adults that were in the room when I was in high school, but it would be, play with a purpose every play, trust your teammates, trust your coaches, leave it all on the field.
Fitchburg High School Hall of Famer, Todd Steffanides, the class of 1995. Thank you so much for joining us here on the KZone and on Recipe for a Classic.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.